Right on time there, Jack.
Am I right on time? Well, it's good.
I mean, a drummer who keeps good time. What can you say?
Yeah, I was in a mad rush. I'm grooming my dog, and we haven't done it. And he only likes it when I do it. And he's long hair, so he got it down to the wire.
There you go. You made it. And we are here to first talk about Koi Fish in Space, the new release. When did you actually finish recording it?
That was done. I think it was done about March a year ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So sitting on something that long usually leads to the realization of, well, there's another album already being written. Is that it for you?
Yeah, I've already made. I like doing the EP concept. I've decided the double EP is my thing because, it's like I work so intensely, and an LP, in the old days, LP was great. Now, you can put out what you want, but in terms of length, but I feel like my energy rises and falls with an EP worth of material. Doing all this, I get to the point where I'm just really burnt. So, but I already have 2 more EPs done.
Wow. Well, unfortunately, I bring everything back to Van Halen in some form. And the first Dave Lee Roth EP or release, in the midst of leading Van Halen was Crazy from the Heat, which is a 4-song EP. And he brought it to Warner Brothers and goes, well, I did you a favor. Every album really only has 4 good songs. Here you go.
Right.
Did that have anything to do with it for you that you weren't, necessarily going to have 10, 12 great songs? It's more like, well, we'll give the good stuff and never worry about the rest.
Yeah. For me, I just think it's like the energetic process. Yeah. I'll start, you could always create something and force it, but then maybe, being a song or a songwriter is really different than what I do. So it's totally experimental, and I don't know where it starts or goes. I think when you're creating a song and writing a song, you have the song, so you kind of know already if it's good or not. I've been in bands. You kind of know that one's better than that one, regardless of where the production goes. For me, it's all about where the production goes, because it's being created as I go. But it is such an, because it's just me and experimenting so much. So like, I might go, that's it. But I might have spent 3 days getting to, that's it, over this one little sound or whatever. I mean, I don't do it that extreme, but, you could, and you're doing everything yourself, and so it's easy for my energy to go, God, I feels like I'm done with this. And, I could force it. You could wait. You could call it an LP and just wait till you get inspired again.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm just into the double EP thing. I mean, obviously, the double EP is only going to be cool if it's on vinyl, right? So each side's an EP. If it gets released just digitally, then I don't know. And I also think, just being honest, I can critique myself easily. I think my stuff's so experimental that an EP's worth is just a more pleasant listen for anybody, And when I first started doing this, I had songs that were like 15 minutes long because they were just jams, and then I was sort of super manic back then. So I would, create these, I would spend months on just one thing, but that's not really a fair listen for everybody else that, because that's like my mad process. Everyone else has their lives, and music has to fit into the context of their lives. So now I've finally normaled it down, 3.5 minute songs, just give them 4 or 5 or 6 things. That's cool.
Yeah, sounds like it to me. But one thing I couldn't figure out with you is you're a multi-instrumentalist. Were you always a multi-instrumentalist, or is that something that came to you after you'd been in Pearl Jam and the Chili Peppers and all that?
Well, I dabble on other instruments, and it definitely came at that time, like around the 90s, I started dabbling in other instruments. I wouldn't say I'm a multi-instrumentalist because I can't play the other instruments. I can experiment. I went through a guitar phase, so there's a few songs I did that, but very simple stuff. That wasn't me. I didn't feel it. I wrote a few tunes and I got them out here and there. I didn't feel that. I'm not a good singer. There's some.
I don't know. You're a better singer than
drums,
me.
I feel it. When I play drums, I feel it. Like, I love this. This is what feels right. The other stuff is not as much, but the experimenting I love. So, I could create from anything. In a sense of now with all the technology that you could, take one sound and turn it into something else. It's kind of what I love. That's what I love the most. And then adding a little bit of maybe some melodic element or keyboard stuff, just to give it a more balanced sense, and give it some melodic value, because I right now, like where I'm going, the newer stuff that's on Koi, what we're talking about, coefficient space, and the other stuff is definitely a little bit more like sounds being manipulated to sound like instruments, but it all starts with the drums.
It all starts with the drums. Well, I've interviewed some drummers who were also singers. It was their project, and they didn't really play any other instruments, but they wrote the songs, and they were able to drum. And as they were drumming, they heard the song in their head, and that was that. Do you hear the song in your head?
No, I have no idea where it goes. As a matter of fact, I a lot of times do start my drum music by listening to someone else's song in my head. In other words, I'm talking my head, it's in my headphones. And I might play, because I want to be inspired when I play. When I first started doing it, I could actually just sit down and put drum parts together all day long, because I love doing that. Like, oh, that beat goes with this, and this is cool. I don't feel like doing that. I just don't feel that anymore. So I might turn on, some of these things might be old Motown songs. It's just something I'm inspired by that will give itself a good arrangement. Sometimes I use tracks. I dare to say this, but I use tracks that I have recorded for other artists here at my house. No one knows. No one's like said, hey, you stole the track that you gave me. I change it, but right. There's inspiration in it. There's a take, there's a good sound. And that seems to always lead to something. I try to have something that goes, okay, this is cool. Where can it go?
You're really hard, and this is a compliment, but really hard to define as a drummer, in that you can do funky stuff. You could do hard rock stuff. Playing with Joe Strummer, you obviously did some punk stuff in there too. Playing with Claypool for a while, that's just esoteric, sometimes funk, sometimes metal stuff. Do you view any particular style of drumming as your specialty?
If I'm going to say it, it's in the rock funk. I'm a rock guy, but I can have a funky pocket. I understand the deep pocket. It's how I play. It's how I like laying into the drums, all the artists you just mentioned to me have there's similarities to it. It's not like playing jazz. I would be lost. Like it's a language I do not understand. I wish I did, because jazz players are so great and so fluid. My goal as a musician would always be to be more fluid. How can you hear something and respond the right way right there? It's like a language we're talking. That's not something I hear easily in jazz and stuff, where improvising and stuff is what you do. So I learned on pop rock stuff, and growing up, I loved, I was a 70s band guy, but I love 60s music, and all the movements of the 60s and Motown, and all these things really influenced me growing up. So that's kind of like where my sensibilities are.
You never know who's a secret jazz guy. Like, I, under no circumstance, ever listened to Charlie Watts playing, going, that's a jazz guy. I never heard it, yet it seems like he lived for jazz.
Yeah. It's a language. Some people really love it. They get it, they feel it. I'm in awe of the players, you know what I mean? Like, I see the players, I see the drummers, and I'm like, wow, just like, that's, but, I've ended up focusing, doing this stuff for so long. I did bands, I did rock and stuff. And then for some reason, whatever it was in the 90s and late 90s, doing this kind of stuff really grabbed me.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier 2 more EPs are in the can. Is it now that enough? Like, most people in their life don't put out 2 EPs, let alone have 2 EPs in the can. Are you at to what else you're working on or eyeing in the future? For example, are you hitting the road anytime soon?
There's no plans, for me to be effective with my show, everything has to be right. So, touring is just, it takes organization. Everything has to go right. I would need certain circumstances. Like when I was opening for the Chili Peppers, I did their Getaway tour, and they took me graciously for the whole 60 shows, and they gave me one of their video screens to use so I could project visuals, and Flea came on stage and introduced me. So, because it was arena, so it was a bit strange for sure, but so he could introduce the crowd, who I was, and they were very receptive. And it worked because there was, I could sort of latch on to getting help and getting travel help and do that. If it's just me by myself, that hasn't manifested much. I just try to, I've only really done my live show for the Ohana Festival, which is really Eddie Vedder's festival, and open for the Chili Peppers. So it's really my friends, having me.
That's a cool thing that you've maintained such long friendships with artists. Because think about it for a second. How often are people able to maintain decades-long friendships with people that may be hitting the road for 6 to 9 months and they're not regularly seeing every week or every month or anything like that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think because we, a lot of my friends, we grew up together, we were younger, and we generally liked each other, loved each other. We were friends, so, and nothing, just because I'm not there or playing anymore. It wasn't because of like malice or, I don't like you, you don't like me, you screwed me, or whatever band guys get into, right? There's a lot of bands have histories of like, oh, I don't like that guy.
He's got the publishing, screw that guy.
It wasn't like that. It was all a good bond of friendship, so I think that's really, how that happened,
Hence talking to a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, possibly a 2-time Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, depending on who we debate with. But one thing I'm curious about is a person at your level, because I consider you a great drummer who played with great bands, is there's kind of this secret world where people get to do tracks digitally. Like, meaning there's a lot of vanity projects or there's a lot of commercial things where somebody goes, hey, can you get the guy from Pearl Jam, that kind of thing, to play on the tracks? Is that something that you've done over the years where people go, hey, do this, and it's under the radar, it's not on All Music Guide and all that?
No, I mean, nowadays there's so many, you can do sessions all the time, and I do a fair amount of sessions from home, but I try to say what they are. So I put them up on my website, whatever it is I do. There's nothing out there, I think, that I've secretly done or something, or been part of that way, that's not, couldn't be found.
So no Cialis commercials?
No. Oh no, I haven't done anything weird like that. No, I haven't done, it's all been, I only get work, it seems like, in the realm of bands and songs and artists, outside of my own music, that maybe have been influenced or enjoy the music of the bands and stuff I've already done,
Oh. Well, where I was going with that is I have a friend who I won't name, an LA-based composer, who they called him and they went, hey, can you do a cover of Be My Baby for a Cialis commercial? And he did. Right. And his name did not go there, and the checks kept coming and coming.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm aware of that world for sure. When I pulled off the road, years ago, that world was something to say, yeah, you should, if you want to do this, you should do that. But it's not, you got to be real quick and fast. And it's like, my whole trip is just like doing something from beginning to end that I feel good about or artistically motivated to do. It's like me as a drummer, it's sort of like, I put some personality into it, not trying to, but it's just sort of the way it works out. So I don't fit into everybody's scheme. Right. And there's all kinds of players. There's great players that can wear a lot of different hats. You might not recognize them listening to what they do, but they're still good, and so, I think there's a lot of, everyone's got to make a living and do what they can. So that's part of it. So I wish everybody could be just write an artist and do what they really felt and make money, but that's not really the way it is.
In your case with recording, are you all digital, or are you a mix of digital and analog?
My recorder's a digital recorder. Everything, all my equipment is based to sound like analog equipment. My favorite sounds by far are, what happened in the 60s and 70s. And the more the time goes on, I've come to realize that it was the sound of those recordings and how they were made that were as much influential to me as the artist that made them. It's all part of that. If you heard some of that stuff on, I don't know, what would, great recordings in the 60s and 70s sound like if they were done in 87? Might not sound that good, or, not, it's like, because the the gear they had and the way the limitations they overcame to create was, to me, I'm learning now, is a big part of what I loved about sound.
Yeah, I hate synth bass, and synth bass is an 80s thing, right?
Yeah.
Or
80s got a little strange. 80s got strange, you know. I mean, a quick funny story is when, you know, when my first band, What Is This, got their first record deal.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 83 we went to record, I think. And I was just expecting, you know, when you go into a proper studio and with your band, you're going to come out and your record's going to sound like, you know, Zeppelin or Aerosmith. You know, as a band guy of the 70s, I go, I'll have that sound. And all of a sudden it was like there was digital reverbs and stuff. And I was like, what is that? I was so like, that does not sound right, you know, and it had started to really change. And they said, well, you can't, studios now, this is what they're equipped with. You know, they're not equipped with that gear anymore. They have this gear. And you know, that's what sort of the more new wave, right? You know, the 80s thing. So it wasn't my favorite sounding period for records, for sure. Even though now it's considered classic.
Yeah, weirdly, people try to sound like that at times, but I'm so glad to hear you say the name What Is This, because it's so weird how the history books don't mention certain bands that were big in scenes and had record deals. And What Is This was What Is This on Triple X, or what was the label?
What Is This started on San Andreas Records, which was, you know, MCA Records sort of wanting to have something a bit more hip and alternative, you know, for bands like that weren't going to, you know, be commercial and but have a somewhere to go in their system. So that's where it started. I think our second record ended up on MCA, but you know, we never got over those humps with that label.
Gotcha. Well, as I alluded to early on, I ask a lot of stupid questions about Van Halen. So I'll just ask this and then I'll let you go, because LA guy, you were in the same scene. Was the Hot for Teacher video partially filmed at your high school? I'm not sure.
That's, you know, it would have been later. Hot for Teacher, I don't know, that would be Fairfax High. And I don't know, since Hot for Teacher was later, right? I recall Van Halen up and coming for certain, you know, like we were a band in high school, we were called Anthem. And you know, there was always guys that were into rock and stuff in your high school. Yeah, hey dude, you know, let me, I got some lights for you, or let me be at your show or whatever. And they would say, you got to check out this band, Van Halen. They're the next, you know, big thing. And, you know, I never saw them. They were Pasadena and we were LA, and I was still pretty young. So, you know, I wasn't quite doing clubs or anything yet. And so those guys are probably like 5 or 7 years older than me. And, but I got to say that first record, I mean, unbelievable debut, you know, there would have been no comparison, I think, you know, in terms of like bands on scenes compared to what they were doing. They were young and phenomenal.
I thought there would have been, where I was going with all that is that there would have been an overlap moment at Cantor's Deli between you and Roth.
No, you know, I do have a Roth story, but we just, when the Red Hot Chili Peppers were recording at Capitol Studios, Roth and I had side-by-side urinals that I think I was in there first, and he went in there and he looked at me, goes, oh, you're one of the Chili Pepper guys, right? And I went, yeah. He goes, all right, yeah, that's it.
Well, they've always said that he knew what was going on around him and who the key bands to look out were. And that proves that. So, you know, Jack, I look forward to that double EP, whether there's a live gig in the future or not. I'm glad that you're keeping very busy doing great music and in an inventive way.
Thank you.
Paltrocast.